Hi, Conrad. Thanks for taking the time to chat to Game On magazine.
Hi, Matthew. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Let's jump straight in. You've been a professional triathlete for over 20 years. But when you initially decided to pursue the sport professionally all those years ago, was it a viable career option? I mean, even at the top level?
Matthew, definitely it wasn't. It wasn't really a career that was known to be able to make a living from. It was the late 1980, so it was early 1990s. And the big sports, or the only sports I think one could really make a living from was cricket, rugby, soccer, and golf. And the only endurance athlete that I knew that could make a living from sport in South Africa was probably Nick Bester, who won the Comrades and a couple of Ironman races. So in reality, I'm not sure what I was thinking when I turned professional and decided to do the sport full time for a living. But the passion caught me early at school already. So when I finished school, it just seemed like the natural thing to go into.
I wanted to get to that. How did you pick up the sport of triathlon? I mean, where did it all begin for you?
Well, I always loved sports from a very, very early age. My parents were both very active and athletic, and I think I started my first races as a BMX racer when I was about 8 years old. And also at school, I did every single sport available at school, from judo through athletics, cricket, rugby, tennis, the works. Um, and I started getting quite serious into athletics and running the longest distances we always had at school. But I quickly got burnt out. By the time I was finishing primary school, I was already tired of all the training we did. We trained sometimes twice a day running, which is probably not the best for that age. So I got burnt out of running, and I saw a magazine article on triathlon, and it looked like such a fantastic adventure. And I'm always drawn to adventure. So when I saw this thing, I thought, wow, first you're a swimmer, and next thing you're a cyclist, and you immediately become a runner. And it was all outside and different from an athletics track, which is always the same size and the same shape, and you just go round and round. So the sense of adventure really appealed to me. And I started training, but first I had to learn to swim. I couldn't swim 25 meters. Halfway through the pool, I was hanging on the lane rope, trying to not drown. So it was quite an obstacle for me, is learning to swim. I think it's most people's obstacles who didn't grow up swimming. But I quickly caught on to the swimming thing, and it was a bit of a handicap for quite a few years. But eventually, the swimming came right, and became quite a good triathlete at an early age.
Let's start with the traditional road triathlon, which is where you started out. And it's an event in which you have twice represented South Africa at the Olympic Games. I wanna relive it with you, and I'll ask you to take us through the two Olympic Games and the feelings that go with representing your country as an Olympian.
Yeah, the Olympic Games is obviously every athlete's dream, and it's the pinnacle of their career. And I'll go back to the early days that we just spoke about. When I was in high school, there was a journalist came to my house and asked me what I wanted to accomplish with the sport. And without even thinking, I said I wanted to go to the Olympic Games, which was quite ridiculous because at the time, triathlon was not Olympic sport and South Africa was not allowed in the Olympic Games during the boycott years. But that's what I said, and somehow by hook or by crook in 2000, triathlon had become an Olympic sport, and South Africa was back into the Olympic movement. And I was 27 years at the time, which is a good time for endurance sports as well. And the qualification was very, very, very tough. It took 2 years, 2 full years to try to qualify for the Olympics, and I had to prove to NOXA, which is SASCOC at the moment. I had to prove that I was a medal contender, and being able to do this, I had to travel the world, all the way from Japan, Canada, Europe, North America, Bermuda. I had to travel around the world to do World Cup triathlons to try and qualify and to try and prove that I'm a medal contender. And a lot of this I had to do on my own dime. There was fortunately there was some help from the organization towards they call it a solidarity, because I was from Africa. They helped me with some of my travel, but a lot of it I had to pay myself. And fortunately, I had a small cattle farming business going alongside my dad's cattle farming business. So when things got really tight, I sold a few cattle to be able to afford flight tickets and to go overseas and to race. So the qualification process itself was very, very tough, but which in hindsight actually hampered my preparation for the Olympics. I don't think the qualification criteria was a very solid one, which basically meant you had to race as much as you can to score as many points as you can to climb the rankings as high as you can, which meant that there was a lot of travel and not a lot of training for the Olympics itself. But anyway, the Olympics in Sydney is probably one of the best memories of my career. The men's triathlon was the first event of the second morning of the Olympic Games. And the setting, you couldn't choose a better setting. It was on the steps of the Opera House was the transition area. So the steps of the Opera House was the grandstands. And because the Australians are so knowledgeable and passionate about sport, there were 350,000 people on the course watching.
Wow.
So people were building grandstands on the sides of the road, and the people were literally just lining the course everywhere. And the swim took place right next to the Opera House there. And the bike was, so it's a 1,500 meter swim, which was 2 laps of 750 meters. And then the bike course was also a lapped course. So we did about 6 or 7 laps in downtown Sydney, and it was going through the beautiful parks, and it was all very compact and tight. So it was very spectator friendly and very good for the TV and cameras and so on. And the run course was also 2 laps right downtown there. So you could always see the Harbour Bridge and the bay and so on. And to the race itself, I just remember how proud I was when they introduced me at the start and called out my country and my name, and I had this huge smile on my face when I went to the start line. And despite all the nerves, I remember before the race, I was lying on my back just relaxing and waiting for the race. I remember seeing 7 helicopters hovering above us, getting ready to film this event. So I was really proud to go, but in reality, my world ranking at the time, I was ranked 15th in the world, and my best result ever was 5th at a World Cup. So I wasn't really a contender to win the race, I think, in my mind. But anyway, so the gun went, and I was never a really good swimmer. So I was, of the 50 athletes, I was 41st out of the water. So I was quite far back. And as I got on the bike, something just clicked. It felt literally like I was riding a motorbike. And the cycling at the ITU racing and at the Olympics is draft legal, so people can ride in packs. And if you ride behind one person, you save 30% energy. So if you imagine riding behind a big group of riders, you save quite a lot of energy. So it was quite hard to make a significant difference in the bike ride. But like I said, I just felt like I was riding a motorbike, and I went from the 4th group and I attacked and got to the 3rd group and rode across up to the 2nd group. And eventually I rode up to the 1st group. And when I got to the back of the 1st group, I was just happy to be in the 1st group and start the run with everyone, all the big guys. But then in the middle of one lap, I realized that if I'm at the back of the group, the riding is quite dangerous back there, and the course is quite technical, and I needed to get to the front. And as I went up to the front, the race suddenly slowed up a little bit, and as I was going already quite fast, I knew I had to attack. So I just really attacked as hard as I could on the bike, and I rode as hard as I could for a couple of 100 meters, and I thought I was on my own. And when I looked around to see how big a gap I had, I saw the world champion from France was sitting on my wheel, Olivier Masson. And I was quite surprised, and the two of us already had a nice gap. And I speak French fluently, but we didn't need to speak to each other at all. We just knew that it's game on, and we had to ride as hard as we can to try and make as much time as possible. So in the last 20 Ks of the bike ride, we made just over a minute. And it was like I said, one of my most amazing memories was going through those crowds and in a breakaway at the Olympic Games, leading the Olympic Games. And also at the time, the cycling was usually quite a passive thing. It was because of the drafting, no one really tried to make a difference on the bike. They all waited for the run and tried to save the energy. And this was the first time at a big event where there was an actual attack. And I was maybe not that well known, but the world champion was with me. So the two of us were literally upending the race. And I think some of the race favorites, a guy called Simon Lessing, was supposed to win the race, and the race was really upended, and the result changed drastically. So we got off the bike, and I started running, and my legs just felt really flat right away. Not only from the hard ride, but also, like I said earlier, I didn't prepare like I would have prepared for an Olympic Games, because
Yes.
I had to do all of this qualification all around the world and all this traveling. So my running didn't feel that great that day, but I just dug in there and was hanging on to, thinking, man, if I can just get a silver medal. So I was pushing and pushing with the Frenchman Olivier Tukoff. He was running in the lead, and about 7K, it's a 10K run, 2 laps of 5K, and at about 7K, I started getting caught by some of the guys behind, and obviously they started running in a big group. And I went from second position at about 7K to 20th position at 10K to finish.
Wow.
So I lost a lot of places right at the very, very end as that big group of runners came by me. But I was, whether I got 10th or 20th, I don't think it really matters. It was more, to me, the memory of breaking away and leading the Olympics at that amazing setting. And the Sydney Olympics was really top notch. The organization was fantastic, and the city was fantastic. And if you're an athlete and you have the accreditation around your neck, you can literally take any bus, any train. You can go to just about any sports event to watch other events. The sponsors all has like VIP areas. I remember the Oakley Safe House was on Bondi Beach, so you could just you get a ride to Bondi Beach in one of the Oakley cars, and when you get there, there's always some kind of a party going on, and there's always surfboards or golf clubs or bicycles or free gear, or you go in there and all the other famous athletes from big sports would be there. So as an athlete whose event is already finished, it's literally just party time and enjoy yourself. And just the cafeteria was mind blowing. I'm coming from a small country like Africa. It was ridiculous to see how amazing the food hall was. I mean, you go in there and you don't have to pay for anything, and it's rump steak and it's fancy cheeses. And I think a lot of the South Africans got in trouble with the McDonald's. There was you could have as much McDonald's as you wanted, which was a problem for some of the boxers, I remember, because they had to make their weight. So yeah, my event finished on the second day of the Olympics, and I basically had 3 weeks of party time.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I watched some most of the most incredible events as well, which was really great memories. Um, but then, in contrast, was the next Olympics, 2004 in Greece. Just about everything changed for me. If you remember the 9/11 attacks, but then in contrast was the next Olympics, 2004 in Greece. Just about everything changed for me. If you remember the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers in the States happened in 2001.
Yes.
So the whole security issue became huge. And I think also Greece, maybe being located where it is, a lot of the bigger countries were very, very nervous about security. So where the Sydney Olympics felt like a big athletes village, Greece didn't have the same feeling at all. Like, first of all, the athletes village was built on the outskirts of Greece, and Greece is a huge city with terrible, terrible traffic. So the athletes village was really on the outside of the city, and most of the events were in the heart of the city. So we had to travel by bus for hours and hours back and forth every day if you wanted to go to any of the events. And the village itself wasn't finished, so it was quite famous. I think if you get to the village, there is, instead of where there's supposed to be plants and trees and stuff, there was just weeds growing everywhere, and a lot of the building wasn't quite complete. But the biggest thing is most of the big countries, like say the UK and USA, and a lot of the first world countries didn't stay in the athletes village at all. They rented the University of Greece, I think was the one. The Americans stayed in the university. A lot of the VIP people stayed in the harbor on big yachts, not yachts, big ships that was guarded by basically soldiers. So the athletes' village was, South Africa and Senegal and Cuba and the small countries, Panama.
Just not the same vibe.
Oh, so you don't see the torpedo Ian Thorpe or like the big sprinters or the famous athletes you used to be able to see in the athletes' village. You didn't quite see anymore, and with the security, you had to check in and check out of every bus you went and every village you went. And also the triathlon was the second last day, so there was a whole 3 week Olympic Games I had to get through. And knowing what a distraction the Olympics get, when athletes finish their events, they start partying, and other athletes still trying to focus on their events. So I missed the first half of the games. I didn't see the opening ceremony, and I missed the whole first half of it because I knew it would be a real energy sapper to be there the whole time. So I only got in the last week and a half. And traveling to the event was tough. It took me 5 hours on the bus there and back every day to go to the triathlon venue to try and train. And when you get to the village, like it was difficult to watch the other sports on TV even because there was only one TV per building. And with all the sports going on, there's obviously only one channel you could watch. So it was challenging to say the least. And then just to cap it all in the race, the course suited me really well. It had a very big hill of about 22%, which is a very, very steep hill that we had to do about 5 or 6 times. And on the second time I went up the hill, I broke my seat post and the saddle basically fell off.
Nice.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to finish the ride, and yeah, so that was a big letdown for me.
So it's a big contrast between the two games.
Yeah, I think it shows you the roller coaster that the life of a professional athlete is. The highs are really, really high, and the lows are really, really low. And I think a lot of young people who come into the sport and think it's this beautiful, fantastic, cushy life, where they get the reality check is the highs, but also most often the lows as well, and it's something you have to learn to endure, or something maybe you're born to endure. Doesn't always go plain sailing, and you have to deal with the difficult times as well,
Moving on to then away from the traditional road triathlon and onto off-road triathlon, the format where you no doubt had the most of your success. Where did this start, and why did you make the choice to predominantly pursue this format?
Okay, so when I got back from the Sydney Olympic Games that you heard me talk about, where I basically partied for 3 weeks non-stop, no one prepared me for when I got back from the Olympics, and this thing that you trained your entire life for basically comes to an end. And at that age and at that level of competition, and with the struggle I had to qualify to the games, and the relatively small amount of aid we got from our country, the next 4 years to the next Olympics seemed like an impossible mountain to climb. It was just so much mental and physical energy and that goes into that kind of thing. And also, like I said, I was barely making a living at the time. I was staying with my parents and driving my dad's car, and at the age of 27. So it seemed frustrating, and seemed like a huge mountain to climb. And my coach at the time, Libby Burrell, in her wisdom, said that 2001 I can do anything I want to try and get my passion back for the sport. And at the time I realized that in the USA there was quite a good road racing scene, and it's non-drafting, so it's 1.5K swim and then a 40K time trial bike where you're not allowed to draft behind other people, and then the 10K run. And because my cycling is my strength, that format suited me quite well. So I knew there was some money to be made in the States, whereas we didn't say that earlier. Out of high school I raced in France for 6 years. So the racing season in France started, or the racing scene started drying up a little bit, and there was less and less money and more athletes. So I knew that if I went to the USA, I'd be able to make some decent prize money. And so that was the road triathlon. But then my coach said I can do anything I wanted to bring back the passion. And
Yes.
I saw a picture in a magazine of Steve Larson, who's a very famous American mountain biker, running his mountain bike through a knee-deep stream. And this thing really appealed to me, like the water crossing, and it was green and almost tropical, and this mountain bike with the mud and the water and so on. And I said, wow, this is what I want to do. So I went to the USA in 2001 knowing that I'll do some road triathlons to try and earn some cash. But I was going to do the XTERRAs as just a fun thing to bring back the fun and to explore something new. Because at the time I'd been 10 years professional for 10 years already, which is at that time already a long career.
Yes.
So I wanted to explore this new thing that seemed like a bit of an adventure. And when I did my first XTERRA, I had to borrow a mountain bike. I didn't have my own mountain bike, and I borrowed this really bad bike. It was terrible suspension, and it was really heavy and cheap. And I didn't even have mountain bike shoes. I just put road shoes and road pedals on this mountain bike, which was a huge mistake, which I fortunately realized in training before the race. I realized that you're not able to run on rocks in road shoes because there were short sections where you had to run over some big boulders across a stream. So I had to go out to the bike shop and I bought the cheapest mountain bike pedals I could, and then I had to go to a second-hand sports store and I found some old mountain bike shoes that the soles were coming off. So I bought those, and then I went to the hardware store and got some screws, and I screwed the soles back on with the screws. So I got there really unprepared, but
very thrifty.
yeah. And then in the race itself, I finished second, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed the event, and the other athletes who raced it were very welcoming and very low key and laid back and friendly, which was quite different from the Olympic scene where the athletes were all quite competitive and all very serious, and there's all these team managers and officials and so on, where the XTERRA was much more easygoing and friendly and so on, and just the sense of adventure of crossing streams and going over roots and rocks, and the running, you had to run some really technical terrain. I really loved it, and so I fell in love with the sport right away. And then I started doing a series of races, and I borrowed a different bike before every single race, and and the season went quite well. I won quite a few of the XTERRAs, and then I ended up winning the USA Series title. And so that was the second last race of the season, and the last race was XTERRA World Championships on the island of Maui in Hawaii. And one of the people I was racing against is Ned Overend, who's a legend at Specialized. He won the first ever mountain bike world championships, and he's won the XTERRA World Championships a few times. And he was a Specialized sponsored athlete, and he was also part of the company. So he was watching me race the entire season because we were literally racing each other.
Yes.
Throughout the series, and he was watching the different bikes every time, and you could see that something funny was going on. And he came up to me and he said, "Would you like to race for Specialized?" And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. And yeah. Often with sponsorship, there's a lot of talk and not much comes from it, so I wasn't too optimistic about it. But just before I went to Maui for the World Championships, there was a brand new Specialized bike at the front door. Like it was top of the level, dual suspension, Specialized M5, and he even threw in some new shoes and a new helmet. So I was in heaven with all of this awesome new stuff. And I took it to the local bike shop in Boulder to assemble. And as I was telling the employees at the shop the story, like, I know Ned is an athlete, someone I race over the weekend, but for them, the Americans, he was a legend. And because I was new to the States, I didn't really know what a legend he was. And I said, "Oh, Ned sent me this bike." And they said, "Oh man, then you have to read his book." And I took a book off the shelf that was written by Ned. It's called Mountain Biking Like a Champion. And they said, "Oh, you should read this book by Ned." So my bike was built, and I got on the plane and I flew to Hawaii. And of course, Hawaii is this fantastic tropical island. It's actually got a bit of a vibe that feels a little like Africa, so I loved it even more. The ocean is 26 degrees and the air is 26 degrees. It's just a fantastic island, and I enjoyed the first couple of days so much that I never got around to reading the book. Of course, I also had to start practicing and training and getting all my equipment ready and so on. So as the race got closer, I started reading this book slowly. But the more I read it, the more I realized I need to know what all the information that's in the book. So I had to speed up my reading, and I had to spend more and more time to try and finish the book in time for the race, so I could learn all this pearls of wisdom that Ned was putting in the book. And the night before the race, I finished the book, and there was a press meeting, a press conference for all the athletes. And I took the book with me, and Ned was there, and I asked him to sign the book. And he wrote on the first page, "Dear Conrad, do not read this book. You're already too fast. Ned Overend."
That's great.
And yeah, and the next day I won World Championships by 10 minutes. And that literally changed my career on this new Specialized bike. Yet again, it felt like a motorcycle, and I had a fantastic performance. And yeah, that winning a World Championships, yeah, it just changes everything in terms of sponsorship, and the prize money was really good. I got this huge big check of $20,000, which is hanging in Caveman Cafe at the moment. Yeah, I literally went in my head, from rags to riches, where I had to borrow bikes and sleep on park benches and drive my dad's car and so on, to be able to get good sponsorship in the US, and had some fantastic companies get on board and support me for almost my entire career, and Specialized being one of them. I'm the athlete that's been with Specialized the longest of all the athletes at the moment, which is 16 years. So yeah, that's my first year in the States was quite a memorable one, and that World Championship title was also one of my favorite memories of my career.
Just on the back of that, your relationship with Specialized, sponsors must be important for an athlete like yourself, and you seem to have cultivated some great relationships over the years. How, I mean, you even have a shoe named after you. How did these relationships develop, and who have been the important players in your career as far as sponsors go?
Yeah, sponsorship, sure. That's a very broad subject, and you can talk about it for hours, because it's also very fluid. It's been changing. Sponsorship's been changing quite drastically the last number of years. But during those years, or even now, if you're the best at what you do, the sponsors, they want to be part of you, and they want to join in the journey, and they want to obviously you to represent their brand, and vice versa. They want to tell your story. And I was fortunate to be able to win just about all the races I did at the time. So I was lucky to attract some really good sponsors and very reputable companies. And like you said, I developed a running shoe that had my name on it. I literally could dream anything I wanted. I create a shoe all the way from the rubber to the laces. Yeah, so those were some pretty amazing years.
I suppose
And
the
yeah,
difference comes in when there's times are tough, you know. I mean, now you look back on your career, and you're a 7-time world champion, but it hasn't always been plain sailing. For example, in 2006, you broke your back on a practice ride, and I mean, coming back from that, you would not have been at the top of your game. You would not have been winning races. So I suppose that's when the real, you separate the real loyal sponsors perhaps from the others. Maybe take us through that, what happened that day, and how you came back from it.
Yes, I've got a few interesting stories about big crashes, but that's probably the one I tell most often. Before the USA Championships in 2006, the day before, I was riding part of the course, and it's in beautiful Lake Tahoe, which is in Nevada, USA. And there's this huge, big blue lake with beautiful mountains, really very, very beautiful. And I finished the climb to the top, and as I turned around to come back down, I knew that coming down the mountain, it's the day before the race, I shouldn't take any risks. I should just go down easy. And while I'm going down easy, I thought I may as well look at the scenery, at the view. And it was quite a big, wide open, sandy dirt road. and nothing technical or something I would normally watch out for. And I was going down looking at the view, and because of the white sand, I couldn't see a small little dip in the road. And as I went over the dip, my weight just changed on the bike, and it basically threw me forward slightly. And I flew over the handlebars and landed on my head with my wrist pointing backwards as well. So yeah, I landed there, and I woke up and my wrist was pointing in the wrong direction, and I could feel there's something really wrong with my back. And to get back on my bike and ride down the mountain with one hand, and knowing that there's something terribly wrong with my back. Yeah, it was hectic. It was difficult going down there knowing that first my thoughts were I'm missing tomorrow's race. Then my thoughts were I'm missing the USA series, which had quite a big paycheck at the end of it. And I knew I wouldn't be doing world championships. And then I realized, but maybe I've broken my back, or maybe I've ended my career. And as I was going down the mountain, I was starting tearing up and realizing that this is really bad. And fortunately got some morphine into me, which does amazing stuff. I think it makes you stop care.
Yeah.
And then I think they actually prepare you for hospital, because when I got to hospital, I had to pay $13,000 just to be able to get into hospital to get treatment for my wrist that was broken in 7 places inside the joint. So I had to get surgery.
Wow.
I still have quite a long steel plate in my wrist with 12 screws in it to keep the joint together. And yeah, I broke my back in 3 places. It was basically 30% compression fractures. And I was sent home, came to South Africa with a back brace and lots of steel in my arm. And I was told to do nothing for 3 months. And of course, the word came out quite quickly, and it was the end of the year. It was contract negotiation season. And I lost quite a few sponsors, including the biggest sponsor I had at the time, which literally just walked away. And yeah, so I was on my parents' farm in Mpumalanga, just healing up and spending time in nature, and word got out. I actually just cut myself off from the outside world, and word got out, and friends of mine in Stellenbosch spoke to someone, and next thing I got a call from Bert and Tanya Picter, who's the owners of Balega Socks, which is basically Falke Socks here in South Africa, but in the USA.
Okay.
And they'd heard about this, what had happened to me, and they called and they said, well, if you're willing and able to race the following year, they would support me. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I was able to come back ever, and how I would heal up from these injuries. And they basically agreed to take the biggest contract that I had lost, and they literally just put their name in there and replaced the shoe contract that I had. In 2007, I came back, and I won every single triathlon I did, or every single XTERRA I did that season, including World Championships. And it was all thanks because of Balega, and those people who supported me for not getting mileage out of it, but knowing that they're going to help me as an athlete and me as a person, and giving me the opportunity to get back on my feet. And it was like a fairy tale. They got fantastic media coverage, and we had a long relationship after that, which was a fantastic relationship, and just shows you the power of people, and how it's important to believe in people, and not just the brand, and not just trying to see what you can do for your sponsor, what your sponsor can do for you, but also growing personal relationships. And I think that's what sponsorship really boils down to, is having a relationship with the people and being such a part of the brand that you don't jump around. I think it's a mistake people do, is people jump around from one sponsor to the next, which creates a really bad impression. And that's one thing I try to do. I've been with most of my sponsors for at least 10 years, which is quite important when you're an athlete. It's not jumping around.
Yes. Conrad, we're going to take a short break and just hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back shortly. We're back with Conrad, the Caveman Stoltz. Conrad, just going back to something you said previously, Conrad, just going back to something you said previously, we have touched on the challenges, some of the challenges you would have faced through your career. Maybe as a word to upcoming athletes in triathlon, cross triathlon, any sport for that matter, but what are some of the challenges that you faced, and some advice you could potentially give to up and comers with regard to those challenges and how to overcome them?
Sure, that's quite a broad subject, challenges.
Maybe just speak to the two or three big challenges you faced throughout your career and how you overcame them.
Yeah, I'll try and touch on the biggest ones. Challenges, sure. I think probably one of the biggest challenges is being prepared properly for the right events at the right time. As you realized with the story I told earlier about World Championships, putting out the performance when it really matters at the biggest events is key. And to get that right, at the level of racing we do nowadays, you do need a good coach. And coaching has moved on quite a lot in the last couple of years. At the moment, if you don't use a real scientific background and scientific principles for your coaching, you're not going to get the results and be competitive. And I was really lucky to have some fantastic coaches. And the last about 8 years of my career I was training with Ian Roger from Cape Town, the sports scientist, and I learned so much from him. In terms of, we only train what we know science has proved to help, and we don't train like people used to train back in the 90s or the tradition, because usually training athletes used to be stuck in tradition and just do what people used to do, whereas now we only follow science. So that's the one thing, is really just following the science and just doing the necessary training and nothing more. I think a lot of athletes train as much as they can, and hopefully that'll make them faster, and that's definitely not the way to go. It's not the one who does the most training, it's the one who trains the smartest.
Okay.
And not all athletes are the same, which is why it's important to, one program is not going to work for everyone. So you need personalized coaching to do well at a high level. So that's the one thing, is finding a good coach that works well for you. And if your coach doesn't listen to you, if you say I'm really, really tired, and your coach gives you another big workout, it's not the right one. So feedback from the athlete is key. If you give good feedback, the coach, if it's a good coach, will be able to adjust the program and get the best results out of you, and not overtrain. Because I think overtraining and injury is probably two of the biggest causes of professional athletes melting down, or young guys not making it or not getting where they should be. So learning that at an early age, how to train properly and how to manage your career properly is key. It's really important. Further on, also, I think the mental training is really important. Being able to cope with the highs and lows of a sport. Like, if you don't have a good result after the race, analyze what happened on the day and see what you can learn from it, and forget about it, and just move on. Say you get a flat tire, and you should basically look at it and go, did I get a flat tire because my tire pressure wasn't right, or my skill wasn't good enough, or I chose the wrong line? Then you learn from that, and you learn to either ride smoother or use a different tire pressure. Or maybe you just got a flat tire because you picked up a nail or something happened that was outside of your control. Then you must have the mental strength to just move that out of your mind and forget about the bad experience and move on, and not let it drag you back down. So you change the things that you worry about, the things you can change, and not worry about the things you can't change. So the mental strength also, I found, comes with time and experience. It took me a long time to win races as often as I did, but once I knew how to win, it became relatively easy for me to win races, even though other athletes were better prepared or younger, or maybe I had just experience of knowing how to win races, and it's a confidence that you get through seeing results over time. So I think a lot of times people try to give up too early. They do 2 or 3 years of serious training, and if they don't see the results right away, they move on, or they find a job or something like that. So perseverance. It took me 10 years to win a world title, and after that I won 6 more. So often perseverance is it's not easy, um, but it's a virtue, and I think it's also a good lesson for later in life. I'm a new father, and I just realized about perseverance and all the perseverance I learned from our baby. So I think it's a good quality to cultivate in young athletes is being able to go through tough times, and keep going and keep believing, and not losing motivation for when the good times come around.
So now, I mean, looking back on your long and illustrious career, you've recently retired and become only the 10th inductee into the XTERRA Hall of Fame. What's next for the most decorated XTERRA triathlete of all time?
Sure. When I thought about retirement, I thought I was going to sit on the stoop and sip coffee. And next thing I saw, got an opportunity to open a coffee shop inside Specialized Stellenbosch, which is a bike shop in Stellenbosch. So I opened the Caveman Cafe in the middle of December, and it's been up and running for quite a few months now. And it's been hard work, but it's also been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the coffee culture. We're really into our coffee culture, so we've got a fantastic machine, and we're told that the coffee is really good. So we put a lot of work and passion into it. And my wife Liesel is also very involved in the shop. She does all the baking of the goods in the shop. She does it herself. The ideas for the food we have in the shop is what we learned during our travels around the world. For example, my wife was a professional netball player. So she played in Australia and New Zealand for a few years, and over there they have what you call Rocky Road. It's a sweet square made with oats and chocolate and cherries and nuts and Turkish delight and coconut slices. So it's a very tasty thing that's not well known in South Africa, but in New Zealand everybody knows what a Rocky Road is. So we worked Rocky Road into the menu, and because we couldn't find one, we couldn't source one, we liked, so my wife makes the Rocky Road ourselves to make sure the ingredients and the quality is there all the time. So yeah, we put a lot of work into it, and we've been enjoying the journey. We have fantastic employees, so we spend a fair amount of time at the Caveman Cafe. But some of the other projects I'm working on is coaching, and I realized that after a whole lifetime of what I've done and what I've seen, I've learned all the call them the shortcuts actually, because making mistakes and overtraining and getting injured and dealing with travel and so on, I've got a lot of experience that I want to give back to other athletes and to enable them to enjoy the sport. I'm really passionate about working with youngsters as well and mentoring people. Not just in training from day-to-day training, but also how to deal with the professional career and how to, the skills that goes around. It's not just about training and racing. There's a lot of other life skills that you need around this to make the package complete. So the Stoltz Racing coaching business is going, and also I enjoy skills training. So I teach mountain biking skills here in Stellenbosch. So I'll take people one-on-one, or I take small groups out mountain biking, and I'm teaching mountain bike skills, which we basically call free speed. Once you have skills, you never lose them, as opposed to fitness. If you sit on the couch for 3 weeks, you've lost all of your fitness, whereas with skills, if you have them, you have them for life. And if you're a skilled mountain bike rider, you're usually safer and faster, and you can ride a larger variety of trails in terms of technicality. And so I really enjoy teaching people skills and seeing them improve and seeing their confidence grow. And yeah, so we've been busy. Something else has come up. I'm going to XTERRA reunion next weekend as a journalist, a participating journalist. So I'm going to compete in the event. and then also write about it for Triathlon Plus magazine afterwards. So it enables me and my family to travel to beautiful Reunion Island, which is a tropical island off of Madagascar, next to Africa.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a French, used to be a French colony. So we love France. I speak French. I've heard so much about the island and the fantastic XTERRA event there. So I look forward to traveling to events like that and being a brand representative, not only for my sponsors, but also for the sport, and also help the sport grow.
And of course, you're a dad now, which probably takes up a lot of your time as well.
Of course, yes. Our little daughter Zena is 10 months old at the moment, and she's beautiful. So we spend a lot of quality time with her, and she loves bikes already. She has a tiny little hot rock specialized. It's the Strider bikes. So she's on that bike. I'll push her around, and she can't even walk yet, but she loves bikes and she loves the outdoors. And yeah, I think it's probably my. I tell people it's my biggest victory in life was having being able, to have such a beautiful child and with a fantastic wife, and all my sporting achievements aside, I think being a dad and a husband, a good dad and a good husband, is probably one of the best things that could have happened to me. And I feel really blessed to be able to be in this position at the end of my career, looking back over a career that I feel proud of. I think I did it the right way. My professional career, I've got no regrets or doubts, and I feel proud of what I achieved, but also being able to be a good dad and a husband that spend quality time with my family. I feel really blessed for that.
Conrad, then finally, I think everyone will want to know your nickname, the Caveman. How did you earn that?
Well, there's quite a few stories, but I think the one people enjoy the most is I was in France way back. I drove home from swimming, and a rabbit crossed the road, and I hit it with the car. And I thought, oh well, I think I just hit it with the bumper, and as opposed to the tire. So I stopped and I ran around the back, and I saw the rabbit there. And sure, I only hit it in the head with the bumper, so it was dead and it didn't have any other damage. So I took it home and skinned it and put it in the oven with red wine and rosemary. And the other fellow athletes, South African athletes, they didn't see this, and they came home later. And a good friend of mine, David Heim, he looked in the oven, and he thought I was making chicken. And he looked and he said, "But this chicken has 4 legs." I said, "No, it's a rabbit," and they couldn't believe it. So I think there's quite a few stories like that goes around. So I think it also carries over to my racing. I'm bigger than all the other athletes out there, and maybe my racing style, which is point and shoot racing almost. It's not a lot of finesse and a lot of just raw speed and determination. I've usually finished races bleeding somewhere. So I think that's part of the ingredients to be the caveman.
Conrad, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat to Game On Magazine today, and I'll be sure to pop down to the Caveman Cafe for a coffee and a bike ride as soon as I can.
Thanks, Matt. We look forward to having you here.
Right, all the best.